Welcome back to another episode of Shift with Elena Agar. This one is truly energizing. I had the pleasure of speaking with Chantell Preston. She is really trailblazing leader with over 30 years experience in the healthcare space. We really uncovered her unique path from unexpected pivot into healthcare to then building more than 65 hospitals across the country and founding different transformative companies along the way. Her story is so inspiring just because of just the sheer growth that she's had in 30 years in very competitive industries in very competitive times. I think it's just a testament on its own. So I really feel inspired by her. She's energetic. She's really has a lot of powerful things to say. And I really think you'll enjoy this conversation and get energized from it as I did. So enjoy it. Let me know what you think. As always, please share, subscribe, and come back for more. Chantelle, welcome to the Shift Podcast.
Hi, Elena. Thank you so much for having me today.
So very exciting profile, very impressive, over 30 years in the healthcare space. Take me through that journey. Take me through the journey of kind of just, being in leadership roles, what took you to healthcare, first of all, and then finding Preston partners as well and, building that out. What led to that? Go as far back as you want to go and bring it up to today.
Sure. It's really an interesting story because, what we think we're going to be when we're kids and what we end up being sometimes are very different. Going to college, I thought I'm going to be a teacher. I want to do this. I want to help the world. And then I got in there and made some changes, strategic changes, and I ended up in healthcare. And people say, how? Well, sometimes it's about who you know, not necessarily what you know. So straight out of college, I got a great opportunity for a company. Some of us like to go to the big companies and start at the bottom. I kind of went to a mid-level company and started halfway to the top. And so that gave me really the opportunity to either sit behind my desk and bark orders at everybody or get out there and learn everything I possibly could. And so I did that. I found mentors. I wanted to learn all aspects of the business so I could not only do my job, but continue to grow within the industry. So I started building ambulatory surgery centers back in the old days. Outpatient surgery wasn't quite as dominant as it is now. Started doing ambulatory surgery centers, got in, learned the development side, the operational side, the marketing, accounting, all aspects. And then to be honest, from there, I got recruited. I kind of found a niche for myself of building healthcare facilities. And when people say, what does that mean? Taking it from concept all the way to exiting or to the turnover to the operational teams. So throughout that time, I said, okay, I want to be kind of niched. I want to be well sought after. So what can I do? And I loved watching things. I love building things, frankly. And so I went from the surgery center market to the surgical hospital market and just continued to grow. Throughout my career, I built over 65 hospitals, whether they're LTACs, rehabs, full acute care, all aspects. And that's from overseeing the design, the construction, the equipment procurement, the licensure, all aspects to getting them up and running. And so was doing that in my late 20s, early 20s, went out on my own at 28 because I had clients that were building these facilities and they wanted someone that would just go to all of these different facilities and oversee this and then turn it over to operations. I thought, why not? How hard could it be, right? So I became a consultant and it was great. But at the end of the day, it wasn't filling my cup. I wanted to build something bigger than that. So we started a company called Atlantic Health Group. We were going to be a surgery center company, go back to that 10 years later. But then we had an opportunity to start a company called Mentis Neurorehabilitation. And that was rehab for traumatic brain injury patients. And to be honest, Elena, we didn't really know what it was when we started. It was kind of like we got a couple nickels to rub together and how hard can it be? It was absolutely life-changing because not only was it building something, but it was also helping people at times that sometimes were the worst times of their lives. So we kind of continued to go down that path. I was still building facilities so we could pay the payroll at Mentis. So it was kind of a trade-off, but then we got to a certain point with Mentis that we all solely focused on Mentis. And then we exited to private equity in 2015. Which was another great pivotal moment in my career because then it was kind of like, now what? We did stay on board for a little while, but I realized that my passion was gone. It became about the economics, not about the outcomes. And I was all about the outcomes in healthcare. I figured you do the right thing, the money will come. So I decided to go out and really, where can I bring the most value? But what I learned when I was going through the sale process is I'm like, where's all the women? I think I'd been solely focused on my own career that I didn't look around and say, okay, where is everyone else? And so the last 10 years have really been around how can I help empower and elevate other women? I've got my podcast, I have a book coming out, I'm doing a lot of speaking, but I'm also consulting for private equity and still doing the healthcare aspect. And why is that? Because I want to stay relevant and stay, validated in that healthcare world and continue to watch it transition, which it's continuing to do. So a little bit of everything now. I do consulting, obviously, through Private Preston Partners, but also really passionate about helping elevate other women and also looking more into the women's professional sports world.
Very interesting. I love it. It's a very dynamic journey, shall I say that? And what was interesting that you mentioned is that first of all, I also wanted to be a teacher, so we connect there. I thought I was going to be a teacher, and then I wanted to be a secretary because I'm like super organized and I love like getting stuff done. But anyway, but what was interesting that you mentioned is that you went in at that mid-level size and you kind of went in at a higher level than you would as a larger organization. I think that's interesting to point out because I think a lot of people always go for those larger organizations, and you kind of took short, not, I don't want to say a shortcut, but you chose a different way that actually probably helped you maybe scale faster.
There's no doubt, because think about it. When you go into a large organization, you're really kind of, at the bottom, you're learning each individual step. When you go into a mid-sized organization like that, you're just kind of thrown into the fire. You're wearing a
Mhm.
lot of different hats, and it's not necessarily that they have those processes in place. It's you're kind of what do they say, you're building the ship as you're running it. I mean,
Mhm.
it's kind of all in that, so it really gives you that opportunity, but you also have to have the right mindset too. Let's just be honest. There was some individuals that were hired at the same time I was with my first company, and they chose to sit behind the desk. Well, that's okay too if that's the route you want, but you look at where I am now versus where they are. They're still working for other people. Again,
Mhm.
what do you want in life, and how do you want to take advantage of those opportunities that are given to you? And so I think that's
Yeah.
really important for people to understand. You choose the life you want to live by the choices that you make.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Yeah, I also spent a lot of time in like smaller organizations, and it's like I remember one of my bosses when I was working for a small company, and she said, "When you leave here, you're going to be able to run your own business." And it's exactly what happened because you were wearing multiple hats,
Mhm.
and you're just like you're just always like in chaos. It feels like it, but it's actually good. Like it's a good experience to have as a younger person, especially, because then you're like, oh, okay. And I think when I see now that I work with companies and I see kind of young people that have been really comfortable in a large organization, kind of sliding under the radar, doing what they need to do, still getting paid really well. And then like reality hits and they're in a different company, like, wait a minute, like I have to do all these things.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting point. Yeah.
It's hard too, and you have to be the right type of person. Not everybody likes this. So I
Yeah.
always tell people too, sometimes it's easier to know what you don't want versus what you do want. And some people don't live well in that chaotic world, and that's okay too, but it gives you a chance to test, where do I flourish and where are the areas that I may be not best suited for. So it gives you that opportunity to kind of see also, where do
Yeah.
I want to fit in, and what do I really enjoy doing at the end of the day.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Throughout your journey, what's been the most, the most exciting thing? I'm sure like all of it is probably exciting, but what's been like the most exciting thing, but also the most challenging thing that you've done throughout your career if you had to choose one or two places?
So I think let's start with the most challenging. Obviously, growing up in a man's world, I was in the construction aspect in healthcare. It was a little bit more challenging because they saw you in a different light than maybe you saw yourself. So I had to live different personas, and I hated that because it wasn't who I was. But in order to gain that respect on a job site, I call it a different personality than my normal personality. And
Mm,
it's unfortunate because we're still battling some of those realities of gender bias a little bit. And I always I want to use that very lightly because, I don't want to take it too extreme the other way. But again, you have to chameleon to the environment in which you're in. And I think I became very good at that because I knew when I had to put that persona on versus my other persona. Now, I did get to a certain point in my life in the last 10 years where I said, hey, I'm going to take all the mask off. I'm just going to be me, whether you like it or not. I can be very direct, but still be kind and compassionate and empathetic of who I am as a person and use those innate skills. Previously, I'll be really honest, I probably wasn't that person. I was, very dictator like. I thought that was how I earned respect. And so I think as we grow within our own journeys, we get comfortable about what am I willing, how vulnerable, and what am I willing to put out there. And as I grew as a leader, I realized that me being more relatable and more vulnerable really helped my teams become more secure in the safe environment to make good decisions and take risks. And that's really at the end of the day what I wanted them to do.
Hmm. That's an interesting point because yeah, I also I'm in tech, so I've also spent a lot of time around, black and gray suits, and everybody, talks the same, and just very, very, very male dominated industry. And I struggled with that for many years. And I wonder, for people who are listening that are just maybe kind of, younger, and they're just starting out in that career, do you feel like they have to play the game before you get to a point where you can be authentically yourself, because now you got the credibility, you got years of experience, and you got you can do what you want because you already have all that history, versus when you're younger, do you feel like you have to play that game of a
I,
chameleon?
I do think you have to play the game, but let me reframe it in a different way. It's also about emotional intelligence. Knowing when you have to play the game and when you don't.
Mm,
I've always said that in my world, I didn't care who got the credit as long as the end result was what I wanted. And so again, it's that emotional intelligence of, yes, there are times you have to play the game. I don't know if I like that term because it makes it sound like you're manipulating the system, but no, chameleon to who you're around. There's
mm,
certain people that I will keep at arm's length, but there's also certain people that I'll let into my inner world. You have to have the wherewithal to trust your gut, first and foremost. I don't think we do that enough, but also know when is the right time in the right place. I show up in certain situations, I'm in a suit. Why? Because I know that's the crowd that I'm around. Other
mm.
times I'll be in flip flops and shorts, right? Because that's the crowd and that's who I am. But yes, I think it's about emotional intelligence of knowing how to react to the environment in which you're in.
Mm. I like it that you use the emotional it is emotional intelligence. Yeah, I just call it play the game because I feel like it is, but
Play
it
the
does sound
game. We're getting, yeah,
manipulative.
yeah.
It does sound more manipulative now that you pointed it out. But yeah, it is ultimately about how do you connect and how do you influence people around you, and it comes down to how you show up, how you communicate, aka all those aspects of EQ essentially. So yeah.
Right. I mean, think about it. And I tell people this all the time. They're going to judge you in the first 10 seconds they meet you. And it doesn't necessarily
Mm,
what you're saying. It's how you're presenting yourself, how you're walking in. I can have the
yeah.
same presence, doesn't matter what I have on, by how I walk into a room. If I walk in like I own the place, people are gonna be like, okay. If I walk in timid, they're gonna be like, okay, what does she have to bring to the table? So I think
Mm.
that's really important as younger people. It's not necessarily that you have to play the game, but you need to be cognizant as to how you're presenting yourself and the audience in which you're talking to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think personally for me, this was something that it took a long time to learn how to show up, like how to that executive presence. I don't know, for the lack of a better word, like that executive presence. What are some symptoms maybe of like how can people know, women in particular, know if they're showing up in a way that works or doesn't work? Are the other symptoms? I'm really not sure, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, I think it's you definitely. I mean, how people are interacting with you
Mm,
is how they're treating you is probably how you're showing up. And I'll just say this, and I think sometimes we have the mentality of, oh, well, we're not invited. I don't care if I'm invited somewhere or not. I'm going to make my own table. Show up, in a manner in which you want to be treated, if that makes sense. For instance, let me give you an example. When you walk in a room, if you're looking to the ground and you're not interacting, they may
mm,
not treat you as that. If you're walking in and you walk up to someone and introduce yourself and you have that confidence, they're going to treat you in a different way. Strike up conversations. You never know who and what you can utilize someone and their expertise for. Get to know those individuals. So I do think it's about how we show up. It's always appropriate to, put your best foot forward, no matter if it's somebody you're meeting for the first time or you've known them a long time. But how do we put our best foot forward? And that's executive presence in regards to my shoulders are back, my head up, I'm communicating, I'm looking you in the eye. And I think that's really important. And that's something that we just don't look at as much as we used to.
Yeah, and those are like small, subtle messages that we send. And again, I learned the hard way. But yeah, small, subtle messages that we send the minute we walk into the room, and from eye contact to everything. It's just fascinating. And I wonder if, with so I work a lot with kind of middle managers and also younger professionals, and I wonder how much of that, is, I don't know how to say it, but like you see a lot of younger people just being a little bit more staying at home, not really engaging socially as much, right? Not, a lot of people work remotely. Even social corporate gatherings are people like, oh, it's overrated and so on. But then I feel like you don't develop some of those skills that we're talking about.
Oh, I'm petrified on what's going to happen because of those things. Because I think connection is so important. And look, I had a battle with my own company and my employees about stay at home versus working in the office. There can be a happy medium amongst everyone, but it's to me, it's incredibly important for you to be able to have conversations eyeball to eyeball. But also think about it. A lot of your building and connection are what I call, water cooler talk when you're just
Hmm.
talking around. How are you building relationships with people? We used to say, okay, check it at the door, work is work, life is life. It's not like that anymore. Everything, in my opinion, is integrated. And I think it makes life easier when it is integrated. And plus, you're spending more time usually with your coworkers than you are with your family. So why are you not building positive relationships? Because what I've seen is that the more that they bond and the more the relationships are, the more they hold each other accountable. The more they feel like they, want to do well. They want to make good decisions because it's impacting everyone, not just them. And I think as leaders, that's important for us to understand we've got to treat our employees as a whole, not just the job they're doing. And I think that that's a lot of the transition that's happened in leadership over the last 10 to 20 years.
Yeah, I wonder also how it's going to continue to change, especially with, and I'm curious your thoughts on this as a leader, and you've started companies, you've exited, you've worked with organizations, consulted. What do you see in terms of how we're going to be expected to lead in the next few years, right? Because we have multiple generations right now in the workforce. We have all the uncertainty, all the, Gen X and Gen Alpha challenges in the workplace with getting people back in the office, all those things, right? With AI, how do you see that changing? Like you've been a leader for, in this space for 30 years. What are your thoughts or predictions? Let's play that game.
There's a lot of complexities right now, and I don't think any of us have it figured out. But I do think that as leaders, we have to acknowledge that complexity first and foremost, and acknowledge people's emotions around it, because there is, not just in the workplace necessarily, but with the economy, with every aspect of the world we're living in. And so, as leaders, we have to acknowledge the emotions that people are having. And I think right now, I'm not saying, again, I always get the naysayers like, oh, but we give them too much latitude. I get that. But at the same time, these are individuals. So, how can we build that safe environment within our organizations where people, can maybe talk about those things outside of just the job that they're doing? But if they're building those relationships, they have those kind of board of directors, that they have those individuals that they can talk to. Let me go back and specifically answer your question. As leaders, I think we have to look at things a little bit differently. I think we do have to compromise. We do have many different generations, and I've had to deal with the Gen Zs versus what I call, maybe the baby boomers. Very different mindset. So how can we accommodate or get us all in the room to figure out how can we establish a set of rules that everyone can live by? And that's a give and take across the board. At the end of the day, we're going to be kind of like every dysfunctional family out there. We may have some dysfunction, but we're going to figure out how we're going to work together, respect each other, and how can we provide the best environment there is. So I think it's a lot of communication. It's a lot of transparency out of leaders. I think acknowledging to the point, but right now I do think that we're having to really shift and look at how do we change for the next generation, but yet still get the work done that we need to get done. And
Yeah.
I think it's a very challenging and question that I don't think any of us have figured out yet, but I know that I've been successful with transparency, getting my teams together, talking through some of those. How can we balance it and making sure everyone's respectful and everyone's on the same page?
Yeah, and I appreciate that honesty because I think yeah, like you're right. Not we don't know.
No.
I think we can do our best and to kind of prepare for it. And I think part of that is that transparency. I think that's ultimately what people really want in organizations. I think it's the lack of transparency. The unknown is what people are so afraid of. And as long as they know, like, even if as a leader, I think like if I'm an employee and somebody's like, listen, we're not sure where this is headed, but here's what we're doing to figure that out, and here's how we're going to involve you, right?
And I'll give you a great example. So I took over, I also own hospitals. I took my hospital company over in 2018, right? And one of my partners got sick. Wasn't my forte, didn't really want to do it. But of course, you're going to step up and say, we had 500 plus employees. So it was interesting to be able to, during that time, restructuring all these changes, then COVID hit. And I know we don't want to talk about COVID anymore, but being in the healthcare systems, when COVID hit,
Mhm.
we knew nothing. I mean, there was so much uncertainty. And I mean, it was almost not even day by day, it was hour by hour. And I really stepped up as a leader and became so transparent, almost to a fault, because I knew that everyone was going through this emotionally on the backside. But hey, let's go through it together on the front side of work and say, hey, we don't know what's happening, but these are the things that we're putting in place to be able to do it. And that transparency was invaluable because what it did is it kept my staff positive in a safe place, and I didn't lose, and I was able to retain. So you look at just not only what it did for culture, but also in regards to the business acumen about it, it allowed me to keep my staff in place where a lot of healthcare systems were losing staff, on a daily basis. So there was some positive to that in regards to that transparency. And so that's why I truly believe in that in every aspect now.
Mm. Yeah, and I want to dive deep a little bit more because I think it's so important. So, as you're talking, you've obviously have led teams, companies, large scale, and so on, like your own. You grew those companies, and have been successful overall. And I think just that story itself, the continuous success that you're having as a leader, I think says a lot. So as you just from your point of view, what do you feel, well, like what's been the I don't know, the top things, like transparency is one. What are some other things that you would credit to your success over the years as a leader? Because I think a lot of leaders could use some tips and pointers. Again, it's your experience, but I think
Sure.
some of it could be really useful.
Sure. And I've done a lot of things wrong, but I think one of the things is I will never ask you to do something I wouldn't do myself. And so I'm going to lead by example in every aspect. And that means whether I'm picking up trash in the parking lot or I'm sitting in a board meeting. And my staff knew that. They knew that if they needed something, they could call during COVID. I mean, I was cleaning rooms just like everyone else was because I wanted to be and show that I was part of the team. And I treated them such as that. And I think that's incredibly important. Doesn't mean that I didn't have boundaries because I did, and doesn't mean my expectations weren't high. But again, I was willing to do the hard work with them. But also, to your point, is being very direct. I've always been very direct. Some people take it well, others don't. I'll just be very honest. But you always know where you stand with me, good or bad. And that's not necessarily to be critical. It's also because I care about you as an individual and I want you to be better. So sometimes we have to have those hard conversations because I want you to see it from different perspectives so it enables you to grow. And that's what people did for me. And I think, again, it helped me get to where I was.
Mm. Yeah, that's really because you see this quite a bit. I was talking to somebody earlier actually, and we're talking about how in order for good leaders to arise, they have to have a model to follow. They have to see that good leadership. So in your case, where was it just through experience? Did you have great mentors and leaders in your life to kind of, mold you into being also a good leader? And of course, we all make mistakes and it's fine, but it's
Sure.
part,
No,
yeah.
I did. And again, my leadership evolved. I wasn't always
Mm,
a great leader, but I evolved. And that was by watching and seeing. One of the key things that I learned very quickly is that it was more important for me to listen than to talk, right? When it came to my employees, when it came to, being in boardrooms, anything like that is sometimes we have those individuals that just want to hear themselves talk. I really wanted to listen. And I think being intentional and listening to people, it really enabled me to build strategies and figure out how to deal best with people in the best way that helped them.
mm,
So I think that there's, you know, we always talk about the positives and there's some great things, but I think as leaders, we need to take a step back and listen more, but also bring the teams together. Another thing is that when I would go into my facilities, I would ask the staff, how would you do it? It wasn't always about how I wanted to do it because, look, I always had a way or I had a thought. But at the end of the day, I don't work there on a daily basis. So if we don't collaborate and we talk to everyone, sometimes we miss out on critical components that can help us. One of our greatest, operational efficiency that we figured out didn't come from the clinical staff, came from one of the housekeepers. And again, if we hadn't have collaborated with all aspects of the process, we wouldn't have gotten that end result. So I think that sometimes as leaders, we think we know everything, but we don't have to have all the answers. It's great to bring everyone else in. It's not managed by consensus, it's not what I'm saying, but it's getting everyone together to hear from different lenses and different perspectives. And I think that's critical as leaders. And we're going to continue to have to do that more as things progress over the next few years.
Yeah. And it's I struggle with this. So like I'm an evolving leader, I'm an evolving manager, I'm trying my best, but I'm like,
It's
let's
hard. Sometimes it's
go.
hard. I'm not going to lie. Yes.
Yeah. I'm like,
Yes.
let's go. Like if like if you can't keep up, like this is what I had. I'm in full transparency. I had to get over the fact that not everybody will move as fast as me,
Yeah.
and that not everybody wants a career that I would want for them. And I think that's the hardest part for me because I'm like, let's go. Like like
Yeah.
why don't you want to be a drive? Why don't you want to drive your career further? And why don't you want to grow? So that was the hardest hurdle, and I'm still learning. I don't think I'm ever going to be perfect. And with this company right now, I have two other partners, and we've just agreed. I said, I think we should just let you guys manage. Like one of us in particular, she's really good. She's like a leadership coach, and she just gets it. I'm like, listen, you do you because I'm just gonna do my thing, and you guys manage the people. I was like, yeah, honestly, part of me, I was like, I'm okay leaving that part alone. I'll get better at it later. So, and I don't know if it's healthy, but that's where I'm at.
Well, no, I get it because that's how where I was, and again, it's been an evolution because a lot of what you're dealing with leaders is personnel, and different
Mhm.
personalities. And I'm like you, what you don't want to work 20-hour days? I love working. What are you
Yeah.
talking about? And so setting those expectations, and that's where again that evolution for myself is realizing that not everybody was me. Not everybody wanted to
Mm,
work 20-hour days. Not everybody
right.
loved every minute of their day. They wanted
Mm,
to do things outside of work. So as leaders, we have to recognize that. And that's like really just appreciating the whole person, not just the job. And I've transitioned significantly. I have a lot of latitude. Doesn't mean I don't want to see you on a daily basis, but I give a lot of latitude because if they're getting to go to their son's or daughter's soccer game or football game or baseball game, they're happier. And at the end of the day, that makes them a better employee because they want to be here, because they know that we care about them as a whole and we appreciate the integration of life and work. And 20 years ago, Elena, I would have never said that. I would have been like, it doesn't matter what your personal life is, it's all about work, because that's what it was all about for me. But when I sold my company and had it all, it was like, oh my God, this is horrible. There has to be more to this than just work. And I think that
yeah.
was a big pivotal time for me to redefining what success really means.
Yeah, and yeah, I think it's just like timing of your life matters and so on. And I feel like I'm in a little bit of a shift right now. Like I'm like learning to calm down. Not I don't know calm down. I don't know what's the word, but like just to like I don't know,
Trust.
just
You
do
got to trust other
trust.
people. Yeah, to
Yes,
do
yeah,
it. Yeah, because we
just
could do it easier and better, right? I mean, always. That's a hard thing to let go of.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm learning, and I'm grateful for to have partners that do it way better than me, so it's good. That's what
Uh,
it's all about, right?
Well, and that's the
Um,
importance of finding a partner that has, fills your weaknesses and vice versa. I mean, that's the greatest partnership you can have.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, you lead you have an important job. You also have an even more important job being a mother of three, doing all of these different things. How do you manage your time and your energy? What are some of your habits or routines that you stick by to help you, and you look great. So like you're just put together, you know what I mean? So it's like, how do you do it all?
Don't kid yourself. I don't always look like this. But no, that's a great question. And I do get that question a lot. There's certain hacks that I've learned over the years. Controlling my time is number one. And when I say controlling my time, I used to think, oh, well, as long as, I get to say yes or no to things, then I'm controlling my time. But I wasn't doing it well because I'm also a shiny penny kind of person. You ask me to do something, I want to help you. I'm like, oh, yes. And then I go, oh my God, why did I agree to do that? So I've really gotten intentional with how do I spend my time? The one thing we don't get back in life is time. So when I get asked to do things or people approach me, whether it's personal or professional, instead of saying yes immediately, I say, let me check my calendar. Because that gives me a chance to bail if it doesn't meet my goals and objectives. It also allows me to reframe it as me saying no to something isn't a negative, it's an opportunity for someone else. My generation, we grew up as you had to say yes to everything. That was just how we were, say yes. Now it's like, no, I don't have to say yes to something. Room mom for school. I was for 6 years when my daughter was in elementary, my oldest. I finally had to say no. Not that I didn't love it, but it didn't align with my values of what the goals I was trying to achieve. So that was the one thing. And so not only, not saying no immediately, I also look at my calendar every week and say, are there things on here that I really don't need to be doing or someone else could do better? And sometimes we get caught up in the busyness. So I have to be very strategic with my time. So I've got certain time allotted for work, I have certain time allotted for my family, and then I have certain time allotted for myself. And I think sometimes the one thing we don't do is take that self-care. And I've learned that in my older age in the last 10 years that 1 hour a day of going for a walk or making a phone call that I've been dying to make, or just sitting in front of my computer and responding to emails without any distractions, whatever that time means for me that I need, I don't change that. And the reason I don't change that is because I don't cancel meetings with other people. Why do I cancel meetings for myself? So
Mm.
just some hacks, and then using AI. I love AI now. I mean, it does my weekly dinner list. It does my shopping list. It does things like that. So anything that I can divest somewhere else, better use of time like AI, I'm all for it. And it's taken me a while to get there, but I'm continuing to learn that. And that's been a huge time saver so I can spend that time somewhere else. So some of the hacks that I use is the blocking, you know, quality versus quantity time with my kids, meaning I'm going to make sure I'm there for the really important things, but I'm not the one that's going to drive them to practice every day and back. Why? Because
Mm.
my time is better used somewhere else. So again, it's a divide and conquer. It's always a logistical nightmare on Sunday nights, trying to figure out where everyone's going and making my kids also contribute to the family. Why am I doing all the work? On Sunday nights,
Yeah.
we have our debrief, who's responsible for what, and then we go on with our days because I don't let their crisis become my crisis.
I love it. The family debrief every Sunday. I
Yeah,
love it.
logistics.
Yeah.
It becomes a logistic
Yeah.
nightmare of who's doing what. But it makes them feel like they're taking ownership, which I've learned has really been important for them as young people. But also, it gives them a sense of freedom that they're getting to say of what they're doing and how they're doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about your book that's coming out and your podcast.
I am so super excited. My podcast is Get Real, Get Results. The reason I started doing the podcast, and it's a quick 15 to 20 minutes for anyone to listen to on the way to work, but it's really more around, women's leadership, women, how to be a CEO of your own house. But the trials and tribulations I've gone through, I had a series on grief. My mom unexpectedly passed away. So it's some of the topics that we don't talk about that I really want to become mainstream so we know that we're not alone as women. And so it's a lot around the leadership, the moms, how we juggle it all. Every once in a while I get a tirade in there about something that happened. So also I do interview guests depending on what the topic is for that month. So go ahead and check it out. It's a lot of fun. And then I am writing a book, and I'm going to talk about reframing the 9 lies that we grew up with. And that goes around really my generation of you can have it all. No, you can't, not at the same time. Perfection doesn't exist. We have to say yes to everything. Someone will take care of you. I'm a big proponent for women learning financial literacy to build their own financial wealth. I do a lot with the sports groups on that. I would love for more women to just understand financial, different asset classes, the questions to ask. So again, they can continue to build their wealth and they can continue to invest in the companies they want to see in the world because we make 80% of the decisions. So that's a lot of the stuff that we talk about in the podcast. In regards to my book, we'll talk a lot about those things and then strategies that I've used and takeaways and practical things that they can utilize, implement immediately to go ahead and continue to live their best life and reframe the lies that they've been living by.
It sounds great. I can't wait to read it and check out the podcast. It sounds super relevant to where I am in life right now. So I would love to check it out. And where can people find you? Where can they access this information or just get in touch with you?
Sure. Obviously, the podcasts are on Spotify, Apple. I have my website, www.chantellpreston.com. And then obviously all the major social media, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, always love to connect with people. And again, my whole purpose is giving back and impact and how can we help each other to live our best lives.
Chantelle, I'll make sure all of that is in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here. Great conversation.
Thank you so much, Elena.